Okay, welcome back. After we discuss about the scalability of the network, now we look at the component of it. The most important component when we want to have a good facility or infrastructure is more on the switch and the router. This is L2 and L3 hardware for your network. So we look at the first one, switch hardware. Hardware itself. There are many um, possibility that you have to choose the different type of switch based on your requirement. It's not only for your data center, maybe for your user itself. You need to ensure you can provide them a good connectivity in terms of bandwidth and also the communication between user and server, client server, and also between the local area network to the internet and vice versa. Okay, this is switch platform. You can see here there are variety of switch platform or form factor and other features that must be considered before choosing a switch. Uh, so when you design your network, it's important to select the proper hardware to meet current network requirement as well as to allow for network growth. That's mean not only for scalability or growth, but for your current requirement. Mean what type of user you host, you serve, what type of application you hosted, and how many users access for that particular application. Need to study, need to look into it. Then within an enterprise network, both switches and router play a critical role in network communication. So discuss more on the switch first, and then we look at the router. There are some criteria need to be considered before you decide which router, which vendor, which model of router you want to buy and you want to use and deploy in your network environment. Maybe in your data center that hosting multiple or various type of application servers, storage servers, and many more. You need different type of switch, but for end user access, you will deploy different type of switch depending on the network design itself. For example here, campus LAN switches such as Cisco 3850 series as shown here. Example, okay, support high concentration of user connection with speeds and security appropriate for the enterprise network. You see there are many ports, right? High density. You can support more than I think this one more than 100 ports, right? But still depending on your requirement. Another example here, Cisco Meraki Cloud Managed Access Switch. Enable virtual stacking of switches. This switch monitor and configure thousands of switch ports over the web without the intervention of on-site IT staff. If you implemented cloud-based services, you want to manage also your network port using your cloud-based solution, then you can use this type of platform. Other than that, we have Cisco Nexus platform, which promote the infrastructure scalability, operational continuity. This means more on the business continuity and disaster recovery lah, and transport flexibility in data center. This normally used in your data center lah. Okay, this one for cloud. Previous one more on user side. So service provider Ethernet access switch feature application intelligent, for example here, unified service, virtualization, integrated security, and simplified management. If you are working with service provider, internet service provider, then you need to look into different type of switch, which sometimes having additional capabilities, AI capabilities. Can support virtualization, network virtualization, and other integrity requirement that you can integrate together. And lastly, must be having a good management portal or good management console. Okay, another example here, Cisco Nexus virtual network switch. This type of switch provides secure multi-tenant services by adding virtualization intelligent technology to data center network. You see a different type of port are available, right? More on multi-tenant environment. If you see in cloud, there are various type of user which subscribe and share the resource pool together. Then we need to having network virtualization, virtual network for each of the users, which are securely isolated from other user. And that's why they come up with this virtual networking switch. This depend on the type of service. Who are you? Is it end user side, your service internet service provider side, cloud service provider side, or other application host environment? You need to know your own environment before you choose this type of service, this type of hardware. Next, we look at the form factor of the switch. So when you want to select the switch, you need to determine the form factor of the switch. Is it the particular switch require fixed configuration or need a modular configuration that you can make it stackable or non-stackable? Okay, so that this feature can help you to determine your future enhancement, for example, your future scalable network. Okay, features and options on fixed configuration switch are limited to those that originally come with the switch. And if you buy the fixed one, there are some limitation in terms of configuration. If you're choosing the modular cases, you can have a better flexibility. You can replace, you can upgrade easily based on the line. Okay. Other than that, we have a special cable which are used to connect stackable switches, which allow them to effectively operate as one large switch. It's actually a collection of switch, but when you want to make it a stackable switch, you need a special cable to connect them together. And then you also need to consider about the thickness of the switch, because the switch will be placed in specific rack or specific uh, space. So you need to know the space, the thickness, and ensure uh, is able to locate in the specific place that you want to put it. Okay, example, one rack unit or 1.75 inch. Actually, they have standard either one IU, 2U, right? One rack or two rack. Other consideration when you are using the switch actually about the port density. Refer to the number of port available on a single switch. Normally, the type of switch come with 12, 24, 48 port, right? For example, here fixed configuration switch support a variety of port density. For example, this Cisco Catalyst 12, 24, 48 still can be supported. See how many switch here? There are 4 switches, right? They can support until 48 maximum. However, for modular switch, they can support very high port density because they just stackable. Just put it add on until full of the space through the addition of multiple switch port line card. So then they can support maximum 384 switch port interface. Okay. Next, another consideration about the forwarding rates. Because we talk about the scalable, right? We need actually certain numbers of bandwidth, certain numbers of space or users that we can support, and still depending also on the type of uh, services you offer. Like I said before, if you want to offer video based services, you need to provide high bandwidth. Similarly here, the switch itself actually we are depending on the switch capability to forward the traffic. So forwarding rate define the processing capabilities of switch by rating how much data the switch can process per second. Although they have a bandwidth, for example, 1 gig per port, but if the processing capabilities cannot offer bigger size or bigger rate of forwarding rate, will be they have reflect actually some delay, some performance issues, especially when involve the critical infrastructure. Okay, switch product line are classified by forwarding rate. You can read their specification based. They will stated the forwarding rate. So you can choose based on this and met with the requirement. For example, entry level switch have lower forwarding rate than enterprise level switch. That's why enterprise level switch also will be the price will be higher uh, compared to the entry level. If switch forwarding rate is too low, it cannot accommodate full wire speed communication across all of its switch port. They say they have 24 with 1 gig and they have gigabit Ethernet. Although they have maximum, for example, 24 gig, but with the low forwarding rate, cannot accommodate that 24 gig in per second, for example. Wire speed is the data rate that each Ethernet port on the switch is capable of attaining. Data rate can be 1 gig, 100 meg, 10 gigs, 100 gigabit per second, right? Access layer switch typically do not need to operate at full wire speed because they are physically limited by their uplink to the distribution layer. So in distribution layer, we can set it. Another capabilities or another consideration about the power over internet or PoE, which the PoE allow the switch to deliver power to the device like the IP phone, access point, camera, CCTV, right, over the internet cable. So you didn't require additional power supply, uh, additional electrical wiring. You just use the Ethernet cable, but very low power, not like the big appliance. Okay, only small appliance only. Access point, camera, IP phone. So if let's say you require to have this PoE support, then you need to provide the switch with this. Okay. However, as a network admin, you should ensure the PoE features are actually required for a given installation. If not, don't go for it because it's a bit expensive to support PoE. Maybe you decide in your data center you didn't require CCTV or IP phone. Don't put this PoE support one. Maybe you need it in uh, user level because you need to deploy access point in multiple location. You need to deploy CCTV. Then you only place or install the switch with the PoE in that specific area and specific line, for example. Need to look into it. Other than that, it's about the multi-layer switching. Normally, multi-layer switching are typically deployed in the core and distribution layer of organization switch network. They support routing protocol and forward IP packet at rate close to that layer 2 forwarding. Sometimes they call it layer 2, a layer 3 switch, right? So they can do routing, can support routing protocol as well. So multi-layer switch often supports specialized hardware. Specialized hardware such as application-specific integrated circuit, is in Cisco ASICs and others. Okay. Normally depending on your design, network design. If you didn't require the router alone, you can combine together L2 switch. Okay, multi-layer switching depending on your requirement. Okay. Lastly, for switch component, this is the summary of the consideration. Business consideration for switch selection. Before you decide which type of switch, which model, which vendor, then you try to look this first one about the cost. Normally business will think about cost first. Is it correct? Yes, you have a lot of features, but if the cost not affordable, then they didn't decide to use it. The cost of switch will depend on the number and the speed of the interface. It's normal. Okay, support features and expansion capability. More capability, more ports, more speed will be expensive compared to the entry level. That's why enterprise level switch normally will be expensive compared to the entry level. This is how the business lah. And then about port density, we discussed earlier, numbers of port you require. Let's say you can predict your user numbers will be expand, will be increased, then you can buy the stackable one. So you can place maybe two first. Later when add on user, you can add on. And then about the PoE, power over internet, and then this is nowadays common to power access point, right? Your IP phone, and also some compact switches. In addition, PoE consideration, if you choose the PoE support switch, you need to consider also about the redundant power supply, because if you didn't continuously provide power supply to that switch, then other devices that require PoE will not available as well. And then about the reliability, the switch should provide continuous access to the network. This means user can trust them, the access are reliable, the performance are good, and then the delay also will be minimized. Reliable, can be trust, can be relies on, right? This is reliability. Then port speed, like we discussed earlier, 1 gig, 10 meg, at 100 meg, 10 gigs. Okay. Frame buffer, the ability of the switch to store frame is important right here. If let's say they are congested port, they need to have some buffer before to sending the actual traffic. Cannot sending everything in one in real time, for example, because of the speed or some sort like content, the traffic are higher. And lastly, about the scalability, the number of users on typically grow over time. Therefore, switch should provide opportunity to growth, like support the wireless LAN, support the modular and extensible of the port or others. Okay, that's all for switch selection. Continue in different part later.